Hey guys, and welcome back to another video where I talk about my journeys with earth medicine. Um, Today's journey, I'm going to talk about my first sweat lodge in EP or Temescal, depending on what culture that's hosting the sweat lodge. Uh, so, yeah, without further ado, I'm just gonna jump right in. This was a weekend of sweat lodge, um, ayahuasca, and so sweat lodge first day, ayahuasca the next day, and then the next day after that was Sapito, um, also known as 5-MeO DMT. So I'm just gonna read from my journal like I normally do, and I might pause and explain some things, but other than that, just listen with an open heart. And I have the picture of Yoda saying, "You must unlearn what you have learned," because in this journey, that definitely was the answer. That was the lesson. Was that I needed to unlearn what I have learned. There was a lot of programming that I was, I guess you could say, a victim of. Programs victimize people. Victimization is a program in itself. So, boy, am I glad to be free of that. But anyway, yeah. So in this journey, Pachamama showed me the programming that I needed to break. So without further ado, here we go. So this happened in August of 2016. When I arrived, my spirit could feel it was a sacred land I was standing in. I felt my body fill up with energy coming from the earth. The soil I was standing on felt slightly electrified. Somehow it felt like home. I felt like I was at a family reunion with my ancestors present. I saw the natives of the land, and they had a sweat lodge that was set up. They call it a Temescal. It was covered in heavy cloth, and it looked like a small wigwam, which is like a half dome hut. In front of the large fire pit, I joined with the other participants who were sitting around the fire pit. There were two men standing in front of the sweat lodge. An older man was speaking to the earth elemental spirits, as the younger man kept growing the fire to heat it up with big lava rocks, which were known as the grandfather stones. They were very hot and glowing red. When everyone arrived, the facilitator told the participants that the sweat lodge symbolizes the womb of Mother Earth. They told us that the sweat lodge is meant to teach humans how to pray, to become further connected to Mother Earth and all her elements. They told us that the sweat lodge ceremony is going to be very hot and humid, that when it gets hot, it is time to pray. Pray to our individual gods, not their gods, but all our gods. They told us that all gods, they told us that all gods are welcome, that although we sweat together, the ceremony is a personal experience. So in other words, whatever you're connected to, you're connected to Jesus, come along, Jesus can sit right there with you. You're connected to Muhammad or whatever, Ra, Sekhmet, Shiva, whatever your god or your ancestors, any spirits that you felt was benevolent to you, you could bring them in. They were all welcome, no matter what. If there was a spirit that made you feel good, you could bring that spirit in. And so, in other words, there was no fundamentalism. There was no doctrination. So anyway, they told the participants that the spirit of the grandfather stones are awakening and are very happy when they get hot. They said that the spirits of the grandfather stones will be leading the ceremony, that the temperature the sweat lodge gets is up to them. After we had told some safety guidelines, we were all smudged with incense, then we entered the sweat lodge. When we entered, each participant would say to all my relations, in the indigenous language we were taught moments before. After all the women entered the lodge, the men entered one participant at a time. Just to let you know, to all my relations, Matakwiyase, that means to all my relations. As I entered the sweat lodge, I saw that it was very dark. I could barely see the bodies in there, and I was guided by a facilitator to my spot, sitting leg to leg next to some other men. So there really wasn't any spots per se, not like normal ceremony. You have your bedding laid out, you have your blanket laid out or your pillow or whatever. In this one there's nothing like that. It's like pretty much everybody just kind of clutters into this this hut, and it's a small hut. There's no standing room. It's all you gotta sit on your butt. You can kneel, but there's not much room after that, and so we're all just kind of crammed in there. Women on one side, men on the other side, as traditional as we can, get it. And they did stick to tradition. For example, women had to wear long skirts. Dresses, skirt. I don't know, but anyway, they had to be long. So like whatever their clothing was had to be like at their ankles, and their shoulders needed to be covered. We were told that in their tradition, the women are very modest, and the men were total opposite. The men, we were told to just wear shorts. So yeah, that's about. And no jewelry, because it gets really hot, and if you have a necklace, it could burn your skin or whatever. So anyway, we were squeezed in this little hut so tight that our shoulders and elbows and knees were touching. We were all sitting cross-legged on the ground, and I could hear the voices of women, but I could not see anybody. Altogether, there were 25 participants. The facilitator brought in 3 grandfather stones for the first round. Right away, I could feel the warmth of these stones. It felt like a very hot summer day. Instantly, came back for a visit. The heavy cloth door was shut, and we were seated in instant darkness. The grandfather stones were acting as faint glowing red night lights. The facilitator sprinkled some medicine on the hot grandfather stones, which filled the hut with a very strong aroma. It was strong but pleasant. He then told us to pray for our ancestors, to invite our spirit guides and deities to be with us in the ceremony. He then poured water onto the stones, which turned the lodge pitch dark, and started to drum and sing. And I mean very dark. Like I wasn't able to see my neighbor. Like the two guys next to me, I wasn't able to see them. It was dark. And later I was told that I was sitting in the honored seat, which apparently is the hottest seat in the hut. But that's, hey, that's, I guess that's what I needed. Because it got real quick. I mean, it gets hot. Um, and, some people, it's really hard for them, very difficult. It's difficult for me. I'm not going to say it's a cakewalk, but I enjoy being hot. So I don't know. Other people I know, they can't stand being hot. They don't mind being cold. See, I'm the other way around. I do not like the cold. So anyway, um, so to say I started to sweat would be an understatement. I actually did not feel myself sweat at all. I just felt something dripping on my leg and then realized it was my sweat. I could also feel the sweat from the men next to me, and needless to say, it was very uncomfortable, as it was supposed to be. I tried to soak up my sweat with my small towel, but it soon got soaked. The first barrier the ceremony broke down for me was the barrier of personal space. The odd complex that men in particular have about not touching other men. This complex of mine went right out the door. The last thing that was bothersome was touching other men's knees and shoulders during a sweat ceremony. It was so hot that other bodies' heat actually became cool. So yeah, you know how in our society we have like personal space and like, yeah, you can sit next to me, but there's like this, you know, pocket of air between us so we're not touching. Nope, not in a sweat lodge. Like literally the hairy sweaty man next to me was, had his knee on top of mine, and then I had my knee on top of the guy next to me. He has his shoulder, his sweaty shoulder was touching me. There was no like moving space. There was no like, here, let's sit comfortably. It's like, no, we were like, huddle. Um, and I needed that because I, have a problem, touching guys, just touching, right? But this ceremony helped me to work through that. To like, we're all sweating here, we're all gross and disgusting, and let's just, let's at least sit comfortably. And in order for us to sit comfortably, we have to touch each other. Okay, let's just do it. Okay. It was like everybody was kind of like in a, the same kind of mindset. Like, dude, it is so hot in here. I'm not even gonna trip about touching another guy. I mean, nobody's touching anybody's, private parts or anything. I mean, that's a whole nother boundary. And there are boundaries in ceremony, which I will discuss more and more as we go on through these videos, as I discuss more of the ceremonies that I attend. There are definitely boundaries. This whole idea of naked orgies around the fire, that's a ceremony that has broken its boundaries, and I would recommend to get away from that as fast as possible, because that's when problems can occur, when people start breaking boundaries. All my ceremonies, I've seen boundaries being held very respectively, and it's very important that we hold that tradition. Okay, so sorry I got off on a little tangent there. I'm going to come back and So the next barrier for me was the barrier of fear. I knew that I was dripping sweat, but the thought came to my mind that I was dripping blood. In fact, a bead of sweat fell on my lips and I could taste the blood. I told myself, excuse me. I told myself that this idea was a trap, that it was my ego trying to get me to leave the sweat. And that's exactly what it was. I put my mind into a meditative state and I stared into the darkness, trying to have no thoughts. At first I started to see the vibrations of the drum, like a pulsing wave of magenta, and I could see the sounds. Yeah, that pretty much explains itself. I literally could see the sound waves in a magenta color bouncing off the drums. Now remember, it's pitch dark in there. It's complete darkness in there, but I could see this magenta movement behind my eyelids. Soon the first round was over and the facilitator opened the door of the sweat lodge. The air came rushing in as if it was an air elemental being. It came into the lodge and stroked everybody on the back. I was so thankful for the air that I was almost in tears. And literally, I mean that. Like, it literally felt like another being swooshed into the lodge and like just caressed everybody's back. I mean, that's what it felt like to me. It literally felt like air realized that I recognized it for the first time, and it came over and just hugged me with this cooling sensation. It was beautiful. It was like I recognized air as a living intelligence for the first time. And that was my first elemental. Well, I mean, I take that back. The fire from the grandfather stones was my first elemental. Fire, heat. And in some ways, and you could also say that water. So, and actually air was my third elemental. But it definitely was the first, like, physical, like seeing the air as an elemental and not just air that we're told, this science of air that we just breathe, or the wind that we just see and we don't think about, but to actually see it as a being that has chosen to come into that hut and is chosen to cool certain individuals off. Who's to say that everybody was cooled off at that time? I've had sweat lodges after this, and there's been times where they open the door and I don't feel the air. The air just hasn't chosen to, rub my back. But in this one, I was thankful that it did. So I thanked the element of air. I even thanked it out loud. I didn't care what anybody thought. Others' opinions matter very little when you're faced with the elements. The idea of judgment becomes superficial, as if it didn't even exist. All that existed were the elements, our bodies, and the spirits. For me, the elements brought out the desire to give thanks more than ever. At the time, giving thanks was so emotional that it sounded like prayer. Also, when one element changes to the other, I was so thankful that I didn't even think of asking for anything. It's like my desires became superficial. The facilitator brought in more grandfather stones, which heated up the lodge even more. Some medicine was sprinkled on the stones, and once again it created a small light show. This time, instead of meditating, I tried to sing along with everybody. I did not see any visions as long as I was singing, but I noticed that singing and praying helped to relieve my mind of the intense heat. After the song was over, the facilitator poured water onto the stones and told us to pray for our ancestors of the past, of the future, for up to 7 generations, both ways. When the water drenched the stones, the intensity of the heat got so hot that my nose started to burn. I asked the grandfather stones to be gentle, and I put my hand towel over my face so I could breathe without too much pain. By this time it was soaking wet with sweat for me and probably from others. My nose was burning. It kind of like felt like if someone holds a lighter, too close to their face and they get that like burn on their nose, or I don't know, that's a bad example. I don't know. Just the flame was so close that it felt like it was burning my nose, and it burned mostly when I was breathing. And so I put this towel that was drenched in sweat, and I'm not even sure if it was my sweat or the guy next to me sweat. I mean, at that time I didn't care. It was water. And I put it over my face to kind of shield the intense hot air that was, burning my nose. So anyway, when I put the towel over my face, it felt so soothing to place the sweaty towel on my face. The water element in the form of sweat was cool and comforting. It helped me to push through that round, and it took away the pain of breathing the hot air. Soon afterward, the door was open and we were met with the air element once again. More stones were moved into the lodge and we started the next round. All the same things happened, and the heat was increased. The air was burning, our sweat was dripping, and drumming got more intense. It got so hot that I put my towel on my face and crouched down to the dirt floor. I placed my hands on the dirt floor, which felt very cool. I did not have enough room to lay down, but I wanted to. Instead, I imagined the earth elemental energy coming up through the dirt, up my arms, and into my belly. I felt my inner core getting cooler and cooler. With each breath, I focused earth energy into my being. I thanked Mother Earth so much for her love and her blessing. I knew that it was because of her help that I was able to make it through the sweat lodge. There were more rounds after that point, but any time it got hard for me, I remembered Mother Earth and her energy. I placed my hands on the dirt and brought her energy into my core, and I was reminded how much she loves us. Mother Earth does not use the elements to punish us. The elements are used to teach us that she actually loves us. The sweat ceremony is a good example of how she uses these elements. The fire helps to keep us warm and to purge out negative energy out of our bodies through sweat. The element of air was like a corner man giving us a massage between the rounds and give us a huge hug when we finally exit the sweat lodge. The water element comes in the form of steam to help us to breathe in the medicine at higher doses, and it also comes in the form of sweat within us to cool our bodies and to help the negative energies drip off our bodies and to travel back to Mother Earth. The earth element comes as a cooling pad for our bodies to cling to when it gets too intense for our bodies and our minds. When any one of these elements are partially removed from us, we realize how important the elements are, and we soon realize nothing else matters but Mother Earth and the four elements: earth, air, fire, and water. Later that night, a man and a woman I had met at a previous ceremony was talking by the fire. Okay, so that's the end of the sweat lodge. This is what happened later that night, pretty much. I do want to say, I didn't write this down, but I do want to say that when the ceremony had concluded and we were all walking out of the sweat lodge, the first step I took out of that sweat lodge was very euphoric. Like, I felt the air element just like came all at once and just like surrounded me with this I mean, it literally felt like a family member that, like, surprises you with a hug around your back for, your birthday or whatever. It literally felt like that. I mean, I came in and like this air was like, whoosh, I got you, bro. And it like it was very euphoric, almost like I was gonna journey. I mean, it felt so good, and just the love that you have for everybody, because you all did it together, and you go around and you give everybody hugs. Complete, strangers now feel like your brothers. And it didn't matter if they were sweaty. You'd give them a hug anyway. And you felt the heart connection. Very powerful. Very powerful. I recommend Inipi, Tamascal. There are other names for them. But I can't think of them right now. Sweat Lodge. If you ever get a chance, it's worth it. Do it. And real sweat lodges. Well, traditionally, there's no charge for sweat lodge. So, take that as, whatever, however you want to understand that. But traditionally, there's no charge for a sweat lodge, and I respect that. And if I ever host a sweat lodge, if I ever get the honor of pouring water for a sweat lodge in this lifetime, I will return the honor and make sure that it also has no charge. Now, food and lodging, that's a completely different story. Okay, so, and in this place, it was a place where there was, food and lodging, like they had, a place. Anyway, I won't get into that. All you need to know is that it was a place where, it was like a village, and we were allowed to stay because we were honored guests for the weekend, like that. Okay, so later that night, I was sitting with a man and a woman that I had met at a previous ceremony, and I was talking by the fire. They were actually in the sweat lodge also. The man's feet were cold, so he buried his feet in the warm sand of the fire pit. We were talking about our past journeys, when all of a sudden I heard him shout with pain. I thought he had burned his foot on a coal, but then I saw he was scooting quickly away from something shiny. It was a scorpion. The scorpion was crawling towards him. My first instinct was to grab a stick and flick it into the fire. So I got up immediately, and something dropped on my shoulder. So I freaked out for a minute, trying to swat off whatever it was on my shoulder. I never actually found out what it was. Thankfully, while I was swatting something off my shoulder, another woman grabbed a bucket and covered the scorpion. I asked the man if he wanted me to get medical attention, but he refused. He said it was his second time being stung. He was once on a spirit quest, and he got stung. He washed his foot with fresh water and threw the scorpion back into the forest. So this guy was, that's what he told me. He said, no worries, scorpion is my medicine. That's exactly what he said. And I was like, yeah, but is your foot swelling? Are you feeling any kind of like numbness or anything? He's like, no, dude, it's my medicine. I'm okay with it. There's a lesson I need to learn. I'm like, wow. I mean, literally, my jaw dropped. This guy was totally cool with being stung by a scorpion, to the point of where he didn't even step on it, he didn't squash it, he didn't throw it in the fire, but instead, he made sure that it was placed back into the forest. I mean, it was far away from from camp, but still, I mean, I have major respect for that. So the three of us sat outside by the fire for a while, and he said he didn't feel any tingling or numbness. He even mentioned that it was medicine. I could not understand how somebody can think that venom from a scorpion or any creature was medicine. The women agreed that it was medicine. They have been journeying for quite a lot longer than I have, so it was another lesson I had yet to learn, but hopefully not the hard way. After a while, we all went to our huts and went to sleep. I did not have an easy time sleeping. I kept thinking about the scorpion. I kept thinking about keeping the fire going so no creatures would come near us. I was in a teepee and the door was shut, but I was still worried. We really are in Mother Earth's hands. We are vulnerable to being attacked any time she will allow it. Our lives are always in her hands, even in our illusion called society. The forest often reminds me that very important fact. That night it was screaming it. I don't know why I was fearful. I've slept out in the open before, right under the stars, by the fire pit in fact. Maybe it had something to do with the sweat lodge and the scorpion incident. I finally did go to sleep after some meditation, and I had to remember to just trust Mother Earth and the universal creator. The next morning is ayahuasca, but I will save that for the next video. Like I said, this was a very busy weekend for me, and busy as in spiritually busy. Very intense work on this one. So that was the Sweat Lodge, and I hope you learned something from it. I know I did. I hope it encourages you to find a sweat lodge near you and to open your mind and dive right on in. I don't think you'll regret it. And I think that sweat lodges really help us on our spiritual journey in this path, in this in life's journey, this journey called life. I think that sweat lodges have really helped me out. I attend them pretty often now, especially in the summertime. Wintertime is kind of hard to get everybody together to get one going, but the summertime is definitely the time to sweat. So leave a comment, please. Let me know what you think. If you have any questions, put them down in the comments. I will answer questions to the best of my ability. I don't have all the answers, but I have been to quite a lot of works. I have been in the shamanic work for quite a while. I'm on my 23rd journey. I'm actually starting to lose count. But as long as I keep writing them down, that's the other thing. Your journal is very important if you do any kind of the spiritual work. Even if you do like crystal bowl healing, meditation, write it down in your journal, because your journal is how you tell your subconscious mind that you want to press on with this spiritual journey. It's kind of showing the universe that you're willing to put in the effort. Much like a dream journal. Those who write down their dreams tend to find that they get more vivid more often. They get vivid dreams, lucid dreams a lot more often when they write it down. So I really encourage you to get a journal. That's the first step. Get a journal and write down your journeys. The other thing is that eventually, as you keep going on this shamanic path, you start to forget the journeys that you've had in the past. You start to forget the lessons that you learned. And so it's good to have a journal that you can go back. And that's what I'm doing. I'm going back and looking. Oh, this is what I learned on my 6th journey. This is what I learned on my 3rd journey. It's like, yes, I can't believe I forgot that. I don't ever want to forget that. It's just a really good place to go back and to just remind yourself, because we are beings that suffer with amnesia. I mean, look at our history. We do the same things over and over again because we are beings that suffer amnesia. So we need to really work on our forgetfulness. We need to really work on that amnesia, and the way we do it is through journaling. So journaling, I can't say it enough, very important. First step in your spiritual journey. I would say first step in anybody's spiritual journey is number 1, stop drinking fluoride. Stop drinking fluoride, faucet water. Absolutely, right now, today, right this minute. If you have a glass of water, throw it out. Stop drinking fluoride. It is the worst chemical you could put in your body for spiritual work. It literally depletes your ability to hold meditation. And there are plenty of videos about that, how it calcifies your pineal gland. Your pineal gland needs to be very active for meditation, for shamanic work. Pineal gland needs to be very active. In fact, I think that ayahuasca goes in and it massages the pineal gland, and it starts to decalcify it because it's been calcified all these years. That's what I think this medicine does, and I think it goes in there and it just it really massages your pineal gland so that it can let you journey. So stop drinking fluoride. Then get yourself a journal and start meditating. Go to group meditations, drum circles. Crystal healing bowl is wonderful. Even if you don't believe it, you don't need to believe it. That's the thing. That's the beauty, especially with shamanic work. You don't need to believe anything. You don't need to believe that it works with the natives. You don't need to believe that their medicine works on you. You don't need to believe in their ancestors. You don't need to believe in their spirits. You don't need to believe in the tree spirits. You don't need to believe in the forest, the land, anything. You don't even need to believe in the earth. Although I don't see how. I mean, to me that doesn't. I can't even fathom that idea that someone couldn't believe in the earth. But you don't technically need to believe in it. I mean, there's some people that think we live in a hologram and we're in a holographic universe and none of this is real. And the medicine works with them too. So you can go to the medicine believing in anything or disbelieving in anything. If you are an atheist, perfect. If you are a Christian, perfect. If you are a Muslim, perfect. If you are a Buddhist, perfect. I mean, anything. If you believe in Palladians and reptilians and all these aliens, perfect. The medicine will work. As long as you have an open mind and an open spirit. And an open mind is not believing in anything you see. You know, so just take that step. Find the others, as Timothy Leary would say. Find the others. Find the others. They're closer than you think. So with that, I think I'm going to end this. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Leave a comment. Give me a, like the video if you like the video. Subscribe, and it encourages me to make more videos. Also, you'll be notified when I do make another video. And most of all, ground to Mother Earth every time you journey. And peace be with you.